Good afternoon. We are here with Khethiwe Gumede, who is an Orgtology student, and we are going to be interviewing her. She is the only female on the course, and she is the youngest, from what I've heard. And so we're going to be finding out from Khethiwe what her experiences of Orgtology are. I've read her essay that she needed to submit as part of the program, and was very impressed by generally a very good mix of colloquial language as well as a little bit of jargon. But she actually put the concepts of Orgtology quite succinctly, which impressed me no end. So Khethiwe, let me ask you to just give a brief bio of who you are, who you're working for, how old you are, where you come from, and basically what your studies are, and then we can start chatting.
Okay, no problem. As Michelle has introduced me, my name is Khethiwe Gumede. I am 32 years old. I am from Eswatini, born and raised here, but I also have South African heritage through my father. I've been educated and lived on 3 continents, so my lower years in Eswatini, and then my undergraduate in the United States of America, doing a bachelor's in computer science and mathematics and art. And then I later on was able to do a master's in visual and digital media at the IE School of Human Sciences and Technology, which is part of the IE Business School, which is a very prestigious business school in Madrid, Spain, where I got to explore different sides of creativity and managing it. So from branding, entrepreneurship, creative project management, data visualization, and a whole bunch. So it was a mixture of creativity, technical stuff, and business management. It gave me a big scope of things to think about in my future career. And then after I had done that, I was hired in Eswatini by the Royal Science and Technology Park, and I started with them in January 2019, where I'm a multimedia and animation lecturer right now. It's going on 3 years now. Now I started the Orgtology program, I think towards the end of 2019, and I'm part of the pilot program. And as Michelle has said, I am now the only female remaining in this first group, and I'm also probably the youngest of the group. So yeah, pioneering.
You definitely have a very impressive start to your career, and I can tell you you're a go-getter. And the thing that I was smiling about earlier was that you very clearly have a very good balance between your left and right brain, if that theory still applies, which is a very, very special gift.
Mm-hmm.
So that certainly must bring you its challenges, but at the same time must provide a great amount of joy to you. How do you find being a lecturer? You're clearly a very, very driven woman, a woman who considers herself to be a leader.
Yeah, I think being a lecturer was, it's sort of in my blood. From my background, especially on my mother's side, is a lot of academics, people who worked as lecturers. My mom was a lecturer, a teacher lecturer, excuse me. She still works in higher education, but in administration as a dean now. My uncle was also an educator, and my grandfather was actually a pioneer for the Siswati language in writing here in the country. So a lot of his books are still even being used now, even though he passed on in 1992. So coming from that background, it feels like it was meant to be. I'm very comfortable in being a lecturer. At first, it was a bit intimidating, but I think I enjoy imparting knowledge to people and sharing and motivating and coaching and training. So I have a good aptitude for that. And like Michelle says, I have this gift where my right and left brain are quite strong. So in life, I've been told I have to choose, but I felt like I don't. So my quest has been in trying to find a way to unite those two things and use them in an integrated way. And
your right brain, left brain provides a very nice segue for us into the orgtology part of things, because you're talking about organamics and orgamatics, and the organamics will deal with the creative side of you, and the orgamatics, the more linear thinking for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you get involved with orgtology?
Well, what happened was that Derek Hendrikz, who's the founder of Orgtology, was brought on board at my workplace to be a strategy consultant. So he came in. I think I had one session with him because I had to go back to school to finish my master's. So while I was away, they were able to do strategy with him and all of that. And when I came back, months later, he sent an email saying, okay, those who are interested in going deeper into Orgtology, we're doing a pilot program, and you can join if you're interested. So I think he sent it out to the companies he had worked with and the people who worked there and whoever is interested. So it was more of an open call to whoever was interested. I started doing the classes with him online, and we've had our challenges of being on and off. And I was able to publish the paper that Michelle and I are talking about. And I can say I was the very first person to submit the first paper that is not written by Derek Hendrikz himself. So I guess more pioneering there. So yeah, I really enjoyed the process of writing the paper in terms of gathering knowledge and seeing how actually Orgtology is related to me personally, the interdependence of both creativity and being analytical. So it's about duality and those things existing in relationship rather than as separate entities, that they feed into each other, that both are needed in an organization. Yeah.
So let's talk about that practical application of Orgtology, both to yourself as well as predominantly you spoke about being involved with startups.
Yes.
And obviously, as a small business myself, was the reason why I started looking at Orgtology in the first place. This sounds a bit nutty. Let me check how this is actually going. And what other people are thinking and seeing. But there seems to be a groundswell of people that more and more people are starting to see the value of Orgtology. What is your personal perception of the value of Orgtology, Khethiwe?
I think Orgtology is definitely a different way of looking at things than a lot of people, especially if you're from a business background. You're used to very linear, concrete thinking kind of approach. For me, I feel like it's a very balanced approach and is applicable to so many different situations, especially now that we're going through the COVID-19 pandemic and all the repercussions and consequences of that. So much uncertainty and change. And I think it's a great way to tackle those issues because it addresses both the concrete and the abstract.
Give me a practical application of Orgtology in a working sense, facing the pandemic as we have done.
Okay, in a working sense, I guess how you can use Orgtology is that looking at your business and your business practices, you have parts of it that are systematic, so your day-to-day running. So you have to make sure that that is solid, but then do not get caught up in the mundane, repetitive work only. You also have to look ahead to your strategy. How are you staying relevant? How are you being flexible and adaptable? So having those two things being strong helps you to navigate uncertain waters, because when you're entering new waters, you have to be creative. So a lot of companies especially bigger ones, struggle with that because they are very set in their ways. So by the time it's too late to really change, there's a smaller company taking them on. I think we've seen that in certain startups that see a gap, and because they're small enough and agile enough, they then close that gap, and yeah, the bigger company then is reacting to what the smaller company has figured out to do, and they're now behind in a sense. So it's realizing that for a big established company, they need to balance what they've been doing well with being able to innovate and to think ahead rather than waiting to react to what's gonna happen. You have to be anticipating the future and thinking about how can we improve, how can we stay relevant so that people will sponsor us and the environment will sponsor us. And then with smaller...
By sponsorship, you're talking about supporting us, buying our products.
Will they continue to buy and make sure that we continue to exist?
And then by the same token there, Khethiwe, the opposite would apply to your small startup.
Definitely.
They start off as a disruptor, but they cannot maintain that disruptor status and be successful. They need to, at some point, adopt the rigidity that the bigger organization may have, but in a more flexible way, if that makes some kind of sense.
Exactly. That's what I was addressing in my paper. And that was exactly what I concluded with, is that because it's mainly about these innovative startups and these people starting out. It starts off as disrupting, you're changing a status quo, something new. But to be sustained, it needs to get orderly and structured and find its processes and still maintain its innovative edge. So that's where Orgtology is very useful because it addresses those two sides of the coin. Sometimes people can lean too much on one or the other. And what happens is that it's not that you go from being projective or being innovative and then you go to be...
You need to explain those concepts with regards to Orgtology, because some of our audience might not be aware of what those mean.
Okay, I'll get into that. Basically, the projective part of an organization is the part that deals with creativity, chaos, abstract things. Yeah, projecting outwards, changing things, and just being out there, starting new things, pioneering, being relevant, thinking about the future, and all of that. That's the projective part. And then the receptive part is the part that maintains things. It's orderly, it's process driven, it's about being efficient, being rational, performing, producing. And those two parts of the organization are both important and they're interdependent, which means that one is not separate from the other. They need each other to survive. They feed into each other. Like I was saying, usually people think, okay, if you're a startup, you go from being a change maker and doing big things and being creative, being projective, to being the norm, being stable, rational, performing, which to an extent is true, but you don't just go in a linear fashion. While you are now more stable, you still need to innovate and stay relevant. So you then go back to what else can I do? And then that becomes the norm. So you're always fluctuating in a sense between those two things. And the extent at which you fluctuate depends on which stage you are in your business or in your venture. But usually you tend to go from being more projective to being more receptive. But the best thing is to be able to assess wherever you are, what your needs are and what you need more of. So I think you are able to make those adjustments, and it's about equilibrium or balance. So the yin and the yang.
I like that yin and yang aspect of it, because
Yeah.
it's exactly that. It's a flow. The thing, though, from what I understand of orgtology, is that that flow, whether it's in or out, is using the same resource pool.
Yes, definitely. It is usually using the same resource pool. So you have to balance it out in terms of your needs. If you need more performance, then that's less resources for your strategy or your relevance. Operations and strategy are interdependent, but resources for one removes resources from the other. So you have to weigh accordingly what you need in that moment in time. But both are important. I think that's it's more about the relationship between them rather than it's an and rather than an or. So there's that connection, and I think optology addresses that connection between those two things. And yeah, my paper goes into that as to why both are needed, and that there's a difference between management and leadership, for example, which people can use interchangeably. But when you manage something, you make sure it continues the same way or gets better in terms of efficiency. Rather than leadership, you have to think ahead, you have to stay ahead of the game and change things. So, yeah.
So how will orgtology apply? And I'm throwing a bit of a curveball here because I don't know. So how will orgtology apply if you've got like a one-man business, for example, who has to wear both hats, leader and manager?
Yeah. When it comes to manager and leader, it doesn't mean that it's a title of one person and they stick to that. It's more of a state that you go between. You can play both roles because the partners that are still young in the business, where you're wearing many hats, as many people who are starting out do, you have to think about, okay, leadership, how are you different? What are you doing differently? What differentiates you and makes you special? That's very important so that people want to buy into whatever you're selling, right? But then you also have bills to pay. You have to make sure you exist tomorrow, not just as an idea, because I think everything starts off as an idea, but it's not a business until it's tangible, really. So now you have to think about the tangible side of your venture. How are you going to make money? What are your processes in place? How are you maintaining order and structure? So I think that's very important in the sense that if you're a one-man business, if you have orgtology, you can set out things from the very beginning so that you have a blueprint, you have a guide that will help you navigate whatever stage you're going through, rather than going in blindly, that a lot of people do, trial and error, and you end up losing a lot of money, and you start bringing people on board before you have any set structure, which creates more problems. So you have to think about what kind of company culture do you want. You have to think about the future of what you want to do while you're where you're at and how you're gonna get there. So you have to think about the concrete steps towards that.
In essence, what orgtology is doing is taking away that survivalist attitude of the small one. So it's actually making him or her kind of stand steady and say, okay, I need to plan. Which actually is good news, because it means if you've, it's that good old saying, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So if you're planning, that small one-man business can actually be hugely successful using orgtology tools to do exactly what needs to be done. But we're running out of time to ask you this question. Do you use orgtology in your lecturing? Is it a process that you can use anywhere?
I think At this point, because I'm still absorbing and learning, not directly, but indirectly, yes, because when I talk to my students, I'm teaching them a creative course, but I tell them the importance of being orderly in your creativity, which will save you time. So basically, working with that creativity, but also structure. I tell them one of our weaknesses as creative people is that we always think, no, I want to work in my own way, in my own time, So you have to develop that discipline of working within the box and being creative within rules. I think those are very important. Sometimes you want to be a rebel, but you can't be a rebel if there are no rules. Then you're not a rebel, really.
You can only really break the rules once you know the rules.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm imagining that would apply well to the creative world as well. So here's my last question for you, Khethiwe. Knowing what you know about orgtology, being up to your middle in it, not totally submerged, but up to your middle in it, would you be able to go back to the old way of doing things?
Personally, I would say it feels as though I was getting to, how can I put it? Orgtology is not really something new. It's something new in the sense that it's being brought to light. But in nature, and in how I am, like we were saying earlier on, being creative and analytical, I think it's it's one of those things where you're like, aha, finally something that explains me in a way, but then applies to a bigger context, in that those things are not separate. Just like your brain doesn't just work on the left or the right, it actually, scientists more and more are saying they communicate to each other. So it's not a separate thing. So it's realizing that everything is connected. And I think I wouldn't necessarily say I'm changing how I used to do things, but yeah, it's more of an improvement, like a marked improvement of, you have building blocks. You start off somewhere in your foundation. So it's building that up, because it's always been innately there, and an innate understanding, but not sure how to put it into words. So it's a great tool that then puts that into words, of the duality we live in while we're in this world. It's brilliant. It's simple, but it encompasses so much complexity within it, and it can only get stronger. And yeah, my paper is part of academia in a way that is now going into formalizing it more and more people will start to see value in it. And I think it's only going to grow. And it also addresses the future, like things like AI and the future of work, which is now, and about how do you handle remote work, and all of that, because you realize it's not about where you're working. If someone can work efficiently from wherever they are, why would you need to chain them to a desk? COVID has proven that things go on without the normal process of things. Like, we're able to conduct Zoom meetings, Zoom conventions, all sorts of things, even consulting, which Orgtology will open up that doorway to consulting for companies and organizations and individuals. You then realize that you are not limited by geography anymore. You can work with whoever's wherever, as long as you have an internet connection and a computer. How do you not only survive but thrive? And I think that's what my paper was trying to say, is that it's easy to start something and be excited in the beginning and be like, yeah, we are changing the world. But then, can you sustain yourself? Sustenance is about being productive also, not just, oh, you are doing something amazing and all of that. You still need to pay people, you need to eat, you need all of that. So it's balancing that rationality with that creative excitement of producing something that hasn't come to be. And I think that's the thing. Orgtology can only grow and expand, and I'm excited to see where it goes and what I can contribute to it and what it can also contribute to my future endeavors.
Well, Khethiwe, thank you so much. Thank you for so much that you've given into this interview. Thank you for your time. You've actually provided me with a new definition of orgtology, and that is balancing rationality with creative excitement. I think that is exactly what orgtology actually is.
Yes.
And be well with regards to orgtology. I understand you're halfway through now, so you're getting to a point of where you will be able to add orgtologist to your list of achievements. You are a go-getter, and we're very proud of the fact that we have a woman in the sphere that is actually excelling, and we wish you well, and we look forward to the day when we can actually see you saying Khethiwe Gumede, orgtologist.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and hopefully that day is very soon. Hopefully by this time next year it will be a definite reality, and all of that will be sorted. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your contribution. I'm glad to be to add clarity to orgtology from my point of view. And I wish you all the best with the great guide, and I'm excited to see the new horizons that it's going to go to. And I think as much as it's a scary time, it's also an exciting time to change the way we do things and look for new opportunities. And I hope that you are going to be able to apply some orgtology principles to everything you're doing as well. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.